Welcome to KC Cares, the voice of Kansas City nonprofits. We share the stories of local nonprofits and the individuals who drive them. Here at KC Cares, we connect the nonprofit and the business sector to enhance the quality of life here in Kansas City for both our residents and our visitors. This KC Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. I'm Ruth Bombigas. Here at KC Cares, we celebrate compassion, community, and the people working every day to make our world a more inclusive place for everyone. Today, we are casting the spotlight on the Olivia Bloomfield Foundation, inspired by the remarkable life and spirit of Olivia Bloomfield, a young girl who was born with congenital muscular dystrophy, whose courage, joy, and determination continue to spark meaningful change. The Olivia Bloomfield Foundation was created with one simple but powerful mission: to light a path toward a more inclusive future. Through supporting groundbreaking research, funding community projects, and championing accessibility for individuals with disabilities, the foundation is turning challenges into opportunities and hope into action. And joining us to share the work of the foundation is Sara Bloomfield, Olivia's mom and co-founder of the foundation. Sara, I'm so glad you could join us.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I think the most important place to start is I would love for you to share a little bit about Olivia.
Absolutely. It's always an honor to get the opportunity to talk about Olivia. And as you mentioned in your introduction, Olivia was born with congenital muscular dystrophy. Those are a lot of big words strung together, most of which people don't know what that means, may not be familiar with. And muscular dystrophy is a term more people are familiar with. In terms of congenital, that means she was born with it. So from the time she was born, she showed muscle weakness, which meant many of those early milestones were missed. Sitting up, rolling, crawling, walking, kind of all the things you look for in that first year of life. And why that's important in her story is that one of the ways you help kids develop that are not able to move freely, ambulate on their own is through equipment. And so Olivia started physical therapy at a very young age, and she started operating a power wheelchair at a very young age. And by young, I mean 18 months old, she had a power wheelchair and she was operating it in our house, which was exciting and terrifying at the same time. As you can probably imagine, you can close your eyes, picture a toddler kind of running into things around the house. And that was Olivia with a 250-pound wheelchair in our home. And so one thing that Olivia was never limited by was her ability to speak out and speak up. And once she had this power wheelchair, we learned quickly that there are a lot of places and spaces that aren't meant for wheelchairs, that aren't built the way that the world needs to be. And that wasn't a lens that I had until I viewed it through my daughter's eyes. And so we moved to Kansas City when Olivia was 18 months old from Chicago, and we saw where there weren't a lot of opportunities to play. There weren't a lot of places for her to go. And that's kind of where our journey started on speaking out and working to create change in our community.
You make it sound so easy, and I'm sure that it was not. Those early days, you moved here, had you had family, friends here, or was this a totally new community for you?
My husband and I are from smaller towns in Kansas, and so it made sense for us. Facing Olivia's diagnosis, we also we lived in Chicago on the fourth floor of a walk-up building, and when we were looking at a power wheelchair, it wasn't an option for us. And actually,
Right.
I like to talk about that story because that is what many families are faced with. And typically these scenarios become problems for the elderly, right? Because they've been used to living a certain way, and all of a sudden your home doesn't function, or, there's a certain event in your life, and now you can't get spaces. But that happened to us at a young age when Olivia was a baby. And so in order to optimize her life, we were faced with selling our condo in Chicago and moving. And at that point, it made sense for us to be closer to family. But
Mm.
I think it's an important story to share because many families are not in a position where they're able to move. And especially with the housing market the way it is, Kansas City surprised us. The shortage of housing and the continued elevating costs in Kansas City, it's a
Hmm.
dilemma that families face.
So you made the jump. You came here, upended career, everything. You said it was a bit of a challenge even coming here, trying to find, residents, et cetera, things that would function. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we moved to Kansas City in 2014, and we quickly got Olivia her first power wheelchair. And with that also came a brand new vehicle because you cannot put a power wheelchair in a typical vehicle. So
Right.
that came with a pretty big price tag off the gate. And then as we looked at meeting up with friends, kind of the typical thing to do with little kids is you go to the park. And as we started looking at going to the park, all the parks were covered in mulch, wood chips
Mm.
on the playground. And something you may or may not know is wheelchairs cannot maneuver in wood chips or mulch. And so there were very limited options for her to even go. And, on top of that, getting into other people's homes was very, very difficult. You don't think about a couple of steps when you don't have to. But all of a sudden, curbs and stairs and all of these parts of everyday life become big barriers.
So, how did you start the journey to tackle these are big challenges, mobility, accessibility?
Yes, they are. Thank you for acknowledging that. We started by looking at where we could go, and that was pretty easy because there weren't that many places. But one of the first places we found was Leon Britton Center, where Olivia started therapy, and we got her enrolled to start preschool. And the community there was really strong and helped share different opportunities. And there's an organization that we, as a family, have been part of for a long time called Variety Kansas City. And Variety Kansas City was opening the first inclusive park in Kansas City. So that was back in late 2014 or early 2015. And it was up by the airport. We don't live up by the airport, but we drove. We drove there. We drove 45 minutes to a playground because we were so excited for the opportunity to play on the playground. And once we got there, we were so glad we went because Olivia's eyes just lit up. We were there for over an hour, and that is a common occurrence for most families with young children. It's something we had never experienced before. And so it changed everything for us in terms of what we knew. And we knew at that point we needed something around here, and the Leawood City Park was being redone. We met the director of Variety. Her name is Deb Wiebrecht. She's since retired, but we became friendly at the opening, and she mentioned she was working really hard to get the city of Leawood to consider making that park inclusive. And we had just been through a process of needing to get special permits for our own home for some construction that was needed for inclusivity and accessibility. And we raised our hand to help and be part of that project. And what we did was we took our toddler in a wheelchair and we took her to City Hall. And she gave her first presentation.
Oh,
Uh,
how wonderful.
it was. She was definitely a little bit disruptive, as toddlers can be. But I feel very fortunate that the community listened to the challenges that we were facing and unanimously approved the idea of making it an inclusive playground. But, the difficult piece that followed is always the funding to pay for it.
Right.
So that was the second part of the journey that then we started working on alongside Variety.
Well, as you moved through this world, the foundation was not in place. You were hoping to provide for Olivia her best life. Tell us a little bit about her theatrical endeavor. I think this is such a eye-opening thing that I hope others will learn about from you.
I think all these experiences that we've already talked about, Olivia speaking up, really shaped her and teed her up for a life in front of the world. She had a very strong voice and she loved speaking up. And we learned quickly that she was not shy and very little actually intimidated her. So she was kind of born to be on stage. And actually, we tried getting Olivia into theater, kind of more traditional theater camps around the city, and we had a really difficult time doing so. Because in theory, theater is very inclusive. However, when you look at the building, the facilities, the characters that are part of the show, it takes a lot of work and a lot of creativity. And so we did struggle to find a theater program for her. She participated in a couple of different summer programs with her friends. And, at that age, 6, 7 years old, kids want to be with their friends.
Sure.
That's really the point. And she had a very difficult time doing so. And as much as she loved it, there weren't a lot of programs in Kansas City. And then we were fortunate to be introduced to Spinning Tree Theater, where the theater was built with the idea of accommodating everyone. So that comes down to the location where the performances are held, the shows that are picked, and how they're able to adapt them. The other cast members that are selected to be in the show that are able to augment their performances to work around people with disabilities. And so Olivia was the star of a show called Edward Tulane. You may be familiar with that novel, but yes, it was a really good experience for her to be included and to have the opportunity to have a leadership role um, with her peers.
You moved forward. I assume that her physical situation progressed and you lost her at the age of 10, I believe it was. That must have been, I can't even imagine. My question is, how did you go from that point to saying, there's a legacy here and we want to build it?
That was an incredibly difficult point. And, the fact that we're talking today, and I get a lot of questions about we're looking to start a nonprofit. How would you go about it? And what I tell people is not how I went about it, because we didn't have a plan to start a nonprofit. We lost Olivia at the age of 10, and there's a lot more advocacy, and there are a lot of awards and accolades that Olivia had already achieved on her own that we haven't discussed at this point, but we knew at that age, even though she was only 10, she had touched all the parks in the Shawnee Mission schools, probably 14 or 15 parks around the city. She was part of an ordinance in Kansas City, Missouri, that all playgrounds would be inclusive going forward. Because Olivia did have a gift, and that was speaking out and speaking up, and not just about is it wheelchair accessible. She became very aware of all the other inequities and all the other needs and advocated for those too. And so she was at that point in her life already very well known around the city for what she did. And so my husband and I said, well, we know her mission, and she had kind of already created that map for us. And it felt like the only option to keep going and doing the important work that she was doing.
But you said you wouldn't create a nonprofit the way you went about it. All right. So tell us what you think your missteps were, because you were able to do it. And that is no small feat in today's world.
Well, I think there's a lot of good in running a nonprofit that is born out of love, right? And that is what grief is. It is love. And so there's a lot of heart in how we do it. But we at the time were grieving parents. We had full-time jobs. We had another child to think about. And so the first couple of years, we felt like we were underwater a little bit. We were doing our best to survive, and we're thankful for Olivia and who she was. That a lot of the opportunities that we had already been started, and we already had those connections. These last few years, we have worked to run fundraisers on our own and to network outside of the connections that we already had and expand the organization. So I wouldn't say there was a direct misstep, but I do think we started slowly, and we have seen a lot of progress in the last few years.
Why did you decide to do a foundation rather than, tag on, let's say, to a Variety Casey or Spinning Tree and just do that and not put this work on yourself?
I know. I thought about that a lot. And the reason we decided to stand Olivia Bloomfield Foundation on its own is because Olivia stood on her own. And as she grew up, she was tackling different challenges. So we wanted that flexibility to grow our mindset with her, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do try really hard to partner with organizations like Spinning Tree and Variety Casey because they are very powerful organizations that have found super important niches. And so those are always going to be charities that we support. But one thing that we're able to do is kind of look outside of their scope for other opportunities in the community, and that's important to us.
So, what is the focus then of the foundation? What kinds of things are you doing? Are there programmatic elements to what you do, et cetera?
Yeah, it is a kind of a broad scope. When we talk about lighting a path to inclusivity, that's a question is what does that mean? One of the things that we're pretty specifically focused on right now, given the status of the country and where we're hearing and seeing so many needs, is on individual support for families. And we're doing that through a couple of different really important partners. Variety Casey is one we've mentioned a few times. One of our initiatives this year is to double the funding for wheelchair accessible vehicles for families. So you may or may not know that a wheelchair van, I actually should check this now, but when we bought our first wheelchair van in 2015, the price tag was $75,000
Oh my gosh.
for a van. And I typically don't talk about price points on cars, but in this case, I think it's really important because insurance doesn't help. Um, and so right out of the gate, we were shocked as a family as to the scenarios that these families are put in. Some people do not know that, when you buy a power wheelchair, depending on what level of insurance you have, that's called durable medical equipment. A certain percentage is not covered by insurance. So depending on our insurance at the time, our out-of-pocket range between 10 and 20% of the cost of durable medical equipment. And Olivia's last wheelchair was over $35,000.
Oh
So
my.
to give you an idea of the cost that these families are facing, they are astronomical. And it becomes very difficult and honestly debilitating to participate in everyday life, to be able to have a vehicle to take your child somewhere. So that's an opportunity where there isn't help. And so we're able to do that. We feel really, really blessed to be able to do that. Another is through a partnership with an organization called Schlegel Design Rebuild Remodel. You may have
Mm-hmm.
heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, We have now given away 4 bathrooms to families in the Kansas City area. So using the restroom is something that you probably don't realize that you take for granted. The fact that you can walk into a restroom and fit, right?
Right.
The size of the door, the size of the space um, isn't so impactful to you, but to wheelchair users, many of them don't have access to their own homes and aren't able to use the restroom, shower safely and with dignity. So we look to expand that partnership so that we're able to provide more because, again, that's an area where there is no help from insurance. And so you see families fundraising on the most personal level to be able to afford to live their everyday life. And so when you talk about fundraising for other things around the city, it's very difficult for families to have the energy to do that because it's so difficult to just navigate their own daily lives.
So, how do you go about doing that? My goodness, somebody hears our conversation today. I would imagine you might be deluged with people who need help. So, how do you all go through and select those that you can support?
This is where we've learned that partnerships are really important. We do operate at our foundation as a one-person show, and I volunteer my time. And so it is imperative that we have partners and we have really good processes in place. And so whenever I'm looking at a new partnership, we look at that. Who are the people that can help to make this happen? Because without those people, you can't accomplish the big goals.
So it's working with them, finding those processes, things that sometimes when you're forming that, foundation out of passion and love, it does have operational things that you have to do. So do you all host fundraisers to help with this, or is it out of just the goodness of your financial heart?
We do host fundraisers. We're very fortunate that we have a community that supported Olivia from the very beginning and her missions as she worked to fundraise for other kids in the Kansas City area. And when she passed away, that was one of the things that was important to my husband and I is that um, any sort of memorial go back to Kansas City to improving this community. And so that's really how it all started. We've had 2 fundraisers. So we just finished hosting our second annual trivia night, which was a perfect event to celebrate Olivia because she was very into trivia and she was very competitive. And so she would have found that to be an absolute blast. We had a lot of members of the community come out and support us. And so that's something we're looking to make an annual thing.
That's great. Um, so she was a star. I mean, I recall seeing her in things, and I'm sure other people did. I want to encourage people to go to your website,
Thank
which
you.
is
Olivia Bloomfield Foundation.org. There's a lot of letters in there, but it is spelled just like it sounds. So if you search us, you can find us there.
and I would imagine if there are volunteer opportunities and things, that's the best place to check.
Absolutely. If you sign up to be alerted, we do send out an annual newsletter with kind of our funding needs and what we're looking to fund, what we have funded for the year, a recap of that, and then what are our goals for the following year. And then also we use that for volunteer opportunities.
Great. Well, we in the few minutes we have left, tell us about the book. There's a
Oh,
special book.
yes. Thank you for asking about that, Ruth. And you may not know there's actually a second book.
Whoa.
Um, I just received copies of it this week, so it's not even for sale yet. But the book is called Extraordinary O Finds Her Superpower. That is book 1. And the second book is called Extraordinary O in the Case of the Missing Pup. It was written as a series in partnership with Olivia's teacher, Amy Soxie is my co-author. And the reason we wrote the book is for education purposes, because Olivia did so much for the community by way of education. And that was a target that we really wanted to expand awareness. And kids are really the best place to start. We find that it's the adults that confuse things and get it wrong. The kids just ask the question out of pure curiosity. And
Right.
Olivia was so good at answering the question. So writing that book in her voice was an honor, but also an opportunity for us to spread her message to kids. And I'm excited to say that the book is in all the Shawnee Mission schools. And in a couple of other districts as well. And we are working to put the second book in the other districts too.
That's a whole different project, is it not? Trying to publish a book. And now will the book be for sale where people can buy them?
Yes. So the first book is for sale on Amazon now for purchase for a soft cover. Hard copies are available at Spruce Home, that is in Leawood, Kansas, and the hardcovers will be as well. The second book.
And then are you using proceeds at all in your work, or?
All proceeds go directly to the foundation. So they go directly to help our community and people with disabilities. So the way we have set it up is the checks all go directly to Olivia Bloomfield Foundation.
So you've established this. You're still young. Where do you hope to see the foundation in 5 to 10 years?
That's a big question. We have a couple of new partnerships that I'm very excited about. One of them being some adaptive soccer opportunities that we are bringing to Kansas City. Olivia has a legacy seat at CPKC Stadium. I don't know if you're aware of that. She was a big, big fan of the Kansas City Current and soccer in general and sports in general. So bringing more adaptive sports and other opportunities. We talked a lot about theater. We sponsor Spinning Tree, but we have some other programming up our sleeve as we look to improve other opportunities within the community.
Well, it's amazing what you're doing. I don't know how you find the strength to do it. You said you have another child. And is he or she involved with what you do?
So we have Emily, who is 10 and a half. And we also have a little guy named Blake, who is almost 2.
Oh my goodness.
He's not super helpful just yet, but Emily is. And yes, being part of the foundation is part of who she is. As a special needs sibling, those are kids that are also very special. And they grow up as helpers and caregivers. So being part of this foundation means a lot to her. And as our little guy grows up, we hope that that's something for him too.
Well, Sara, I wish you the best of luck. It's the Olivia Bloomfield Foundation doing wonderful work in trying to not only help and lift up those who are in need of support, but wake us all up and educate us as to what's out there and open our eyes and see that the world is a big place and should have plenty of room for everybody. So thank you for spending your time with us and the work that you're doing.
Thank you guys. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it.
And thank you for joining us for KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by a nonprofit called Charitable Communications. And this KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on KC Cares or find out what we're up to, you go visit our website. It's kccaresonline.org. And spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And don't forget, Saturday mornings at 8 a.m., you can catch us at ESPN 1510 and 94.5 FM. Thanks for joining us on KC Cares.